Welcome to the Good Talk Podcast, where we remind you of the joy of life, the love of God, and the possibilities that lie ahead. Pete and Jordan here for episode 24.
Yep. Part 2 of our series. Not part 2, just the second week of our series.
Second week of I Quit. Mm-hmm. I Quit Busyness.
Yep. That's hard.
So hard. But yeah, it's gonna be a great one to dive into. I think it's very, very important, just the whole timing of this.
Yeah. So because of COVID, right? Like we're talking about essentially like coming out of what we've been in this like crazy, weird year, as all of us know, everyone in the world knows. But we went from like, normal life to just nothingness.
Yeah. And I have two weird emotions going on at the same time: excitement and anxiousness.
Yeah.
Excitement that things are starting to feel like they're going back to normal, but I have a tremendous amount of anxiousness the past couple weeks about almost feeling like overwhelmed. Like it's like going from it wasn't that busy, all of a sudden it's getting really busy. Mm-hmm. And so we'll talk about that in just a second. But hey, thanks for listening to this. And as always, if you haven't subscribed, we'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, a rating on iTunes. It helps beyond what you could imagine. So it really means a lot to us when you guys do that. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. So COVID.
Yep.
I know we were talking about this. So I was looking up because I think the year mark was like a week or two ago,
I think
maybe 2 weeks ago. And all these like articles came out with like, here's what the past year has looked like. And it was really fascinating. Obviously there's a ton of horrible, loss, and I'm not discounting that at all, but just from like a statistical standpoint, outside of like the medical stats that we all are very aware of, the impact of COVID. But I thought it was so interesting just to look at it from like a not only busyness, but just life in general. So I have some fun like statistics. So over the past year, 269,896 pets were adopted.
Really? That's a lot of pets.
Which, it's apparently 36,000 more than the average. So I guess people were like home, and I just love that. I think that's
it was a great time to get a dog, or especially a puppy.
Oh yeah. I had a ton of friends get puppies or had babies, and I'm like, this is a great time because everyone's home and you're not having to go to work and all that. Baking quadrupled, which is not shocking.
So did calories.
Puzzles purchased tripled. So you couldn't find puzzles. I don't know if y'all remember this, but puzzles were impossible to find. But it shows you I think of anything in life that there is to do when you're not busy, it's a puzzle. Like sitting down and looking
literally nothing else to do. You might do a puzzle.
It just speaks to the busyness. Streaming time doubled, which is no shock there.
That's not surprising.
I thought this was interesting. Divorce rate declined by 22%. And I think there's probably a lot of different factors in that.
Is it because they couldn't get to court?
Oh my gosh. Stop.
No, I'm serious. I heard that from a lot of people.
I really don't know.
That had filed and they were not seeing those cases.
I don't know. I looked at it as
they had more time
together.
That would be your perspective. They had more time together and they started talking.
My love language is quality time. Can you tell? Yeah. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. 430 billion fewer miles were driven by people. That's a lot. I feel like that saved something in the atmosphere. I don't know.
Saved a lot of money on gas, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Home Depot sales increased 21%. That's not shocking.
Sure.
Every time we'd go there, we'd be like, this place is packed.
I bet the first 3 months of COVID, we went to Lowe's 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah. Well, we were also selling your house at the time.
Yeah.
So like redoing stuff, but like plants. And I got into horticulture and all of the things.
We have a ton of plants. I was going to say, do they have anything about gardening? Because they said people started planting their own food at like a crazy rate.
Yeah, that wasn't included in mine, but yeah, it was like, what was the war? There was a war where people did that, where they planted gardens. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So obviously everybody started working out from home. Peloton, their quarterly revenue jumped by like 170%. It's just wild to see, like, obviously there was a ton, like I said, a lot of negative stuff.
A lot of economic loss.
But like, look how much people slowed down to build, to plant, to play, to just watch something with their spouse. I don't know. I just think that part, to echo what you were saying, like we had a year kind of just this permission to slow down.
Yeah.
And I think permission is one of the biggest things that a lot of us don't feel like we have,
Yeah.
in life to
Yep.
slow down, because this culture tells you faster, stronger, go. So
And
I don't know.
I know that this would be a controversial statement for some of you, but I believe COVID in some ways was a gift. Because what it did is it gave us the gift of slowing down.
Yeah.
Now, again, it came
COVID wasn't a gift, but some of
came at
the
a huge
outcomes were a
cost,
gift.
right? It came at a
Yeah.
huge cost. So you're right. It wasn't COVID itself that was a gift, but the restrictions that came along with COVID had a byproduct that you can be looked at as a gift, which
Yeah.
was this idea of slowing down. Because before lockdown, almost everybody's life was defined by speed, this rushing, right? Living at this rocket pace was kind of like the norm. And then all of a sudden, things came to a screeching halt. And yes, there were aspects of that we all hated. We hated not being able to go out to eat. We hated not being able to go to sporting events. Like, we hated those things. But there was a byproduct of goodness that it forced us to kind of slow down. And I just wonder, as we kind of get back into like normal life, are we going to lose all that? Are we going to lose some of the lessons that I think we actually learned over this past
Right.
year and just run right back into the rat race?
Right.
And again, I think that it wasn't fun having offices closed and gyms closed and bars closed and global travel shut down, and staying at home was kind of this new norm. And but the other side of it, as you mentioned, people started playing board games and putting puzzles together and baking and like spending time together. You and I would drive through the neighborhood, and in the middle of the day, we'd see a dad
And a mom just
and a mom
hanging
outside
out.
playing with their kids.
Yeah.
And it would be like, that can't normally happen. And yeah, sure, I'm sure he was jumping on a work call, or she was jumping on a work call right after that. But you had these moments
Yeah.
that weren't normal. And while all that lasted a lot longer, I think, than any of us ever thought it was, things are definitely starting to open back up. They just are. And traffic's getting busier. I've talked about that.
Yeah.
Airports. I felt like I was the only one flying all of last year, and now airports are starting to kind of buzz, and calendars aren't bare anymore. And again, we're all kind of wondering, does everything go back to normal? Are there any long-lasting impacts to the way that we spend our time post-COVID? And there are a few hints of that, like in New Zealand. I don't know if you've heard of this. They're going to a 4-day work week.
That's cool.
Yeah, or at least they're debating that,
Yeah.
looking like they're going to do that. You have companies like Twitter who have said the employees can continue to work from home indefinitely.
Yep.
So I actually think there are some learnings that even on a corporate level we've picked up on that will be applied to the future. But I think we're all wondering right now, okay, how much does it really change long term?
Yeah. And I think our goal for this episode is like, and how can you still maintain some of that health, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
this isn't just us talking about like COVID and is it ever going to go back to normal? I think our heart and hope is that we can still maintain some of that and have steps to get there.
Yeah, because it's a balance. Because again, there are aspects of opening up I'm so excited about. Like I've so missed going to concerts. I've so missed large gatherings in our home together.
Or just like walking into the grocery store without,
Yes.
without a mask on. Like I so miss being able to look at someone and just give them joy with a smile without having to say anything.
I miss Titans games.
I know you do. You miss that for sure.
But again, at the same time, as I mentioned at the beginning, I also have this anxiousness because I'm seeing calendars fill back up. I don't want to go back to when friends reach out to me. Like the very first thing that they say is, I know you're really busy, Pete, but like, I don't want to get back to that norm because I have felt the hopelessness. I have felt the anxiety. I've felt all the pressure that comes along with a schedule that's way too full. Yeah. And it comes at a high cost because your family suffers, your attitude suffers, your job suffers, your health suffers, your soul suffers. And so, like, how can we kind of take the best of what we learned over the past year when it came to pace of life and then apply that as we move into a post-COVID era?
Yeah.
That's really, I think, the challenge, and it's kind of what I want to talk about. And the bottom line is this: the decisions that we make dictate the schedules that we keep.
Yeah.
And the schedules that we keep determine the lives that we live. And I think the key word there is decisions. What I want everyone to understand on the front end is the pace of life that we live is our decision.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility. You can't blame your boss. You can't blame your friends. You can't blame your parents. You can't blame your kids. You can't blame your kids' sports leagues. All of this comes down to your decisions, and the decisions that we make like dictate the schedules we keep, and those schedules that we keep determine the lives that we live. And I think what we're trying to describe here is what some would call just like a slower pace of living, right? It's like it's kind of a cultural revolution around this whole notion that faster is not always better. And that the slow philosophy is not about doing everything at a snail's pace, it's about doing everything at the right pace. Right? And so it's about, savoring the hours and the minutes instead of counting them down. It's about doing everything as well as possible instead of as fast as possible. And Jordan, I'm a big efficiency guy.
Yeah.
I love efficiency. I really do. But I also know that there's a point at which efficiency can rob you of joy and it can rob you of purpose. And I think there's got to be another way to live. And I think that there's some things lessons learned over this past year that we need to apply to the upcoming weeks and months as we do start to get back to normal.
Because it has to be intentional.
Has to be intentional. You
don't slip into not being busy. Yeah. I think just the nature of everything that we live in tells you to be busy.
Yep.
Even when you don't think you're being busy. Sometimes I think like I'll take 30 minutes for my lunch break, and working from home, and I'm on Instagram and I still felt busy, like there's still everything that we surround ourselves with, we may not even realize is actually, contributing to our busyness. It's just wild. So yeah, it's something you have to be so intentional with, and the decisions you make have to be so intentional.
Yep, for sure. So let me just give you 4 things that I'm trying to remember going into this post-COVID era. Number 1 is remember busyness does not equate to extra time. I think that for most of us, we bought into this lie, this idea, this illusion that if you're really busy and you work hard, that somehow you're saving up extra time that you're going to get to spend in the future.
Yes. Do you remember what I told you this morning? So I've had trouble sleeping the past few days, just like pregnancy insomnia, I guess.
How does that?
And I've never had
how does
that
associated with pregnancy, by the way?
Gosh, I was reading it last night, but I was so tired I don't remember why. There's just, I think, hormones and anxieties, and like when you can feel the baby, it's just it wakes you up. Anyway, so I got up from bed. I've always been the kind, my head hits the pillow, I'm asleep. And last night I just tossed and turned. So I finally got up. I worked for 2 hours and I got up this morning, and the first things I did was work until right now. Yeah. And I thought by working more hours last night, I'll just work, and I'll do it faster, and then I'll have more time tomorrow. And I haven't. It's you always will find something to fill the time. Yeah. So I just give that as a real life example.
Absolutely. Being busy does not mean that you're storing up extra time used in the future. The only thing you're storing up is impatience and frustration and stress and anger. Now, there are some things that can save you time. There are things like that I think are really important, like just sometimes be unavailable, right? Just don't answer the phone. Like I think scheduling time for your email can save you a lot of time instead of just responding every time you hear that little ding.
Yeah.
I think making less commitments can save you a lot of time. Especially, I've noticed this because I haven't had this for a while. I've noticed that in 2020, there were really no long-term commitments because nobody knew when things were going to open back up. And what I've noticed about myself is the further away the commitment is, the more likely I am to say yes.
Right, because it doesn't feel like
it's not even feel like real time. They talk about Monopoly money. It's like Monopoly time. It's not real time.
Like, October, sure.
Yeah, I'll do that. Absolutely. Why not?
And then you get to October and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy.
Right, because you can even look on your calendar, there's nothing there. But you got to realize that most of the time your days and your weeks fill up days and weeks advance of those days and weeks, not 6 months in advance.
Yeah. So it's easy to fill up your schedule and not even mean to.
Yeah. So that's just a little thing. Just remember, just because you're busy does not mean you're somehow saving time. You're not.
It's okay to say no to things.
Absolutely.
It's okay to say no to things. That has been my a huge thing I've learned. And just being a people pleaser, I hate saying no. I hate it. Like, hey, can you come to this? Yep, I'll be there. Hey, can you go to coffee? Yep. I just hate saying no, especially if I don't have a great reason besides just that I really just don't want to have to do something tomorrow
Do you know why
night.
you do that?
You tell me.
What we're going to get into in just a minute.
Okay.
I promise you. Because I think a lot of people struggle with that exact same
Okay.
thing. So here's the second thing. And this is kind of the reason, right? Remember, busyness does not equate to value. Right? This is really important because our culture today puts like greater value on busyness over deep connectedness. We convinced ourselves that if we're not busy, we're not valuable.
Yeah.
And so busyness really kind of serves as this like false reassurance. It's kind of this hedge against emptiness where you think, obviously, my life can't possibly be silly or trivial or meaningless if I'm so
or
busy.
unsuccessful. Yeah.
If I'm so busy. But the two things don't correlate, right? We've essentially said that busy is more important than depth. We've said busy is more important than meaning. Busy is more important than purpose. But it's possible to be busy and have no depth, to be busy and have no meaning, to be busy and still have no purpose.
Totally. Well, think about like, have you ever had a job you hated?
Yeah.
Okay. Like you can be busy in that job all day and feel purposeless.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And, but you feel like, okay, somehow because I'm busy, I'm adding value to this world in some way, shape or form, which sure, there's tasks that you do that to add value, but yeah, you can equate just like checking boxes as value.
Totally. Yeah. And a lot of this has to do with pride. Like when you associate your busyness with your value and your worth, then what happens is pride enters the picture and you end up making really, I'll tell you, I hate saying this story because it makes me look like such a jerk. And it really, I think if I could like highlight a moment in my life that I so wish I could get back, this would be one of them. But when my youngest son Brewer was being born, in my defense, he was born early, okay? But he was born over a weekend on a Friday. And when you're, at that time, I was a full-time pastor and
Weekends
we had weekend
were
services.
yeah.
And I made a choice to not like call a replacement at the last second. I was like, no, I'm not going to put somebody else in that position. I'll do this. And so I was there for his birth. But then I left the hospital on Saturday so that I could, make preparations. I teach a bunch of services, like 4 or 5, and then I show up around lunchtime on Sunday. My wife at the time, Brandy, had been discharged early. She's sitting there in the lobby with the baby in the carrier, and I walk in. And in that moment, it just hit me like, what a jerk. Why didn't you just say, find somebody else? Again, I had associated my busyness with my worth, my value. I thought I was irreplaceable. It was all pride.
Right.
That only I could do that. Only I could teach at those services.
And at the same time, only you could be there.
Absolutely.
For
the only person.
In that moment, yeah.
And it's a moment that I so wish
I say
that
be
could
there,
have
like you could have been there in the hospital, not at church. Yeah.
No, you're right.
That's tough.
Yeah, so you just got to be aware of that.
Yeah.
Here's the third thing I'd say. Remember, busyness does not always equal love. And this also plays into why you have such a hard time saying no. You have to live your life to be loving, not to be loved. We've talked about this before on the podcast because this is something I struggle with. For a long time, I struggled with no because what I thought no meant was that I wasn't serving someone. I thought no meant that if I said no, there was a chance you were going to choose not to like me or you were going to choose not to love me.
It gives you an opportunity to make that decision. Yeah.
I thought I was being loving. The reality, I was living my whole life just to be loved. And the word no will never make sense in your vocabulary if you're living to be loved.
Yeah, that's really good. I think about like I have almost all of my family is in Georgia, and we make decisions to go down there and spend a lot of time there. But to me, that is to be like loving and to like build that relationship.
Absolutely.
If I was making those decisions because I was worried that they wouldn't like me if I don't come down there, then that would be I'm making that decision just so that they love me back,
Right.
But that's the delineation I make in my mind is like, I think about certain things like that. And I'm like, no, I make those decisions. We make those decisions. I commit that time because that's important to me.
Yeah.
And it's to be loving and to build relationships to be loving.
Yep.
But it's super easy to say yes to a coffee and yes to a wedding that's 6 hours away that's going to take away from a family vacation you had planned. I just had to do that recently, but it's easy to do that. And then you get done with those tasks. Like had I, made a big sacrifice to go somewhere. It really probably was not my best yes. At the end of that, like you're always drained. You never feel good. You never feel like you got to deposit, really what you thought might be the outcome. You get done and you're like, man, I don't know that was worth it. If we could just have that hindsight.
Totally. And we've said this before. Every yes you say means there's also a no. And what happens, especially when you're trying to chase love from people, is you're saying yes to this, yes to that. You're chasing these people trying to win their love. And then what you're doing at the same time is you're saying no to the people who are already there willing and offering you their love.
Yeah, that's really good.
And it's just this kind of backwards thing.
really good.
But anyway, fourth thing I would say we got to remember in this transition of going into this kind of post-COVID era is remember busyness keeps us from dreaming.
Yes.
And this has been such a cool thing about the past year. I know for you and I, but I also know this to be true about a lot of our friends too.
Yeah,
So we've
totally.
had these conversations. You and I have dreamed up more fun ideas over the past year than we ever have.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because we had the time.
We had time, right? Yeah, that's what happens when you say no to some things, when you quit some things, when you create some margin in your life. Inside of that margin opens up space for new opportunities and new dreams. And one of my favorite people in the world is Bob Goff, right? And he wrote this book called Love Does. Amazing guy. Google him if you don't know who he is. It would be well worth your time.
Yeah.
But I've had the opportunity of him pouring into my life in different seasons. And one of the things I've always admired, he's always had this thing called Quitting Thursdays, where every Thursday he says, you should just quit something. Like, you don't even have to have a really great reason. Just quit something. And so his to-do list on Thursdays is love God, love people, quit something. And I love that. Just quit something, right? And the whole idea is if you don't quit much, you can't change much. You can't do it all, right?
Yeah.
I think about some recent things I've quit. I quit Snapchat. I quit TikTok. And I've quit my USA Today app.
Yeah, your USA Today app is missing you, bro.
No, it
He's
is.
literally
I
like
love
an
USA
hour
Today
plus
at
a day.
2:30 in the morning when I can't sleep. No, I quit those three things easily. I gained an hour a day, and I don't miss those three things at all.
Yeah, well, you were bad at Snapchat anyways. So.
I was terrible at it.
But yeah, I
you
love
gotta
that,
give some
quitting
stuff
little
up.
things. Yeah. Man, I'm sitting here like, well, I gotta quit today. I don't even know. It gives me anxiety, but it
you know
just
what?
shows you.
And for a lot of us, we don't have to quit a whole lot right now because it was quit for us.
True.
Life was canceled,
Yeah.
but it's coming back online now, and so you got to start thinking about what are you can't just go back into the next weeks and months adding without subtracting some things, or your life's going to get way out of balance. And so sometimes you have to give up some perfectly good things to get to even better places.
Yeah.
Again, the decisions we make dictate the schedules we keep, and the schedules that we keep determine the lives that we live. You can't blame anybody for your pace of life other than yourself and your decisions.
It's good. Convicting.
I've been doing some coaching with some people, and one of the things that seems to be pretty across the board with people is exhaustion. Even right now, even before life's fully gone back to normal, I hear from a lot of people this level of this underlying exhaustion. I'm tired. And I think a lot of that sometimes comes not only from overcommitting to activities, it comes again from equating busyness with value and worth. And if your value and your worth are up for grabs, right? Meaning you still feel like you're trying to earn that by saying yes to everything, or by scheduling as much as you can because the busier you are, you think it gives you more purpose. Like, of course you're exhausted, right? Of course you're just worn out. And there's this passage, it's one of my favorite passages where Jesus gives us, I think it's just this really cool invitation that he gives where he says, come to me. Like, come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. And I've always loved that because in our society, we do tend to be pretty burned out and pretty exhausted. And I think, again, that it's the kind of exhaustion that doesn't get fixed from a long 2-hour nap. It's not even the kind of exhaustion that gets fixed from going on a 10-day vacation.
Yeah.
You may need both those. You may need a nap and you may need a vacation. But the kind of exhaustion that I'm talking about, that I know some of you feel right now, is an exhaustion that's at a soul level. And that's why I think that invitation is really cool. Like, regardless of what you may or may not believe when it comes to spirituality, I just think this is a beautiful invitation where Jesus says, hey, just come to me. It's almost like he knew we would be running ourselves ragged, trying to find our worth, trying to find our value
Yeah.
from all the different things in this world.
Yeah. Well, and it echoes the other scripture, which tells you to be still.
Yeah.
And I think stillness is really hard because, like, for
Yep.
us in culture, we think not being busy means, all right, we're going to sit on the couch and watch stuff, or I'm going to go sleep early, whatever. That's all great. But the stillness, I think, is kind of this awareness and presence of mind in knowing that, like, it's okay. Like, life is moving and you don't have to be moving for life to be moving. And I don't know. I just think that stillness brings a lot of opportunity for enlightenment.
It does, for sure. You know, one of the things that I've been kind of messing around with the past couple months of my life are breathing exercises. And that's something that's really helped me to just kind of slow down, to be aware of my own breath. And so I just want to kind of close out by looking at this little verse and by giving everyone an opportunity to slow down and just kind of be aware of your breathing. So entertain me for a second. Now, if you're running right now listening to this podcast, this isn't going to work. But if you're in your car, or you're sitting at home, or you're at your desk or whatever, everybody can do this. Jordan, I want you to do this with me. Just take a big deep breath in and let it out real slow. Do it again. Big deep breath in. Let it out real slow. Now, you guys just keep doing that. And as you do that, I want you to think about this. Your value is not up for grabs. Your worth does not have to be earned. And what you have been searching for has been yours all along. And so as you keep taking those big, deep breaths and just let it out real slow, just listen to these words of Jesus when he says, come to me. All right, come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. You don't have to keep living at the insane pace of life that some of you are living at. You don't have to. And we can take a lot of what we've learned over this past year and we can apply it to the coming weeks and the coming months. Because I promise you, the rat race, it's going to be calling you. It's calling me, right? It's calling you. And I think we all have to be just really careful of that. And the more that you understand it, it's your soul that probably needs rest more than anything. I think the more you're going to find the healing that we all need.
That's really good.
Yep.
I'm all relaxed.
Are you?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, breathing does that.
It's good.
Remember that when you're giving birth here in a couple
Well, guys,
months.
oh my gosh, stop. Feel free to share this if you know somebody who's kind of just super stressed right now, going back into the real world as it starts to reopen up, or just in general. That's really helpful to us. So share, rate, subscribe. That would be awesome.
Yeah. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he smile on you and be gracious to you. May he show you his favor and give you his peace.